West Indies have wrapped up the ODI series at home to Sri Lanka with a 3-0 win, and that comes on the heels of the T20 success. Regulars to the show will know that Johnny Barran is fronting the coverage for Flow Sports and has been giving us regular updates on how it's going. So we thought we'd catch up with him now and just find out his thoughts as the white ball part of the tour concludes. Welcome to the show, Johnny.
Darren, lovely to be back. Yeah, I know another fantastic win for the West Indies, who are making this a habit now. Of course, they won the Test series in Bangladesh, then got home 2-1 in the T20 series, and now a clean sweep in the ODIs. It's fantastic stuff for the West Indies. They haven't done that for a while, it's safe to say.
There's been the emergence of some quite positive performances. Shai Hope, Darren Bravo with the bat, Evan Lewis, each of them in each match in this ODI have got tons, which has been notable. But I thought an interesting highlight was the emergence of the spin bowling attack for the West Indies, which we're probably not quite used to, are we?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good point. I mean, funnily enough, actually, one of the false narratives of West Indies cricket is that it's all about pace and power. The reality is, actually, if you look at sort of the domestic competition and test matches over the last few years, is that spin has been a significant part of their success. You only have to look at Roston Chase, of course, who took 8 for against England in Barbados, didn't turn a sausage, but went through England in that second innings. And actually, spin is a big part of the Caribbean. And one of the narrative going into this series was that, Sri Lanka were going to be a real threat. If you look at Hasaranga, for instance, he took 8 wickets for 42 against the West Indies in that T20 series. And all the talk was that he was going to be an absolute nightmare to face in the ODIs. But they went to the Viv Richards Stadium and it was a pitch, if you like. The first pitch was played for the first two ODIs, and it didn't have a great deal of pace and didn't have a great deal of spin either. And that kind of muted, if you like, the Sri Lankan threat with the ball. Hasaranga didn't get a wicket in the first 2 games. And it was only Sandakan that did take a wicket in the first 2 games. And then there was a couple of wickets to spin for Sri Lanka in that final game. So just 3 wickets for them in the course of 3 ODIs. And funnily enough, if you compare that to the West Indies, they took 11 wickets by spin. So they outspun the Sri Lankans at their own game in home conditions.
It's interesting because a lot has been talked about the Indian bowling attack over the last few years of how they've morphed. I mean, we've seen that the spin is still as strong as ever with the recent performance against England, but the emergence of quick bowlers in India, there seems to be a kind of a sea change in traditional thought about how nations are perceived in their attacks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, India, you feel coming, depending on the weather this summer, and also the conditions that they're presented with. I mean, last time, of course, when India were over here in 2017, I mean, all the pitches nibbled from ball 1, didn't they? They were sporting tracks, and that played into India's hands. And they could easily, although it was 4-1, I think the series result, that could have gone the other way if you think of those key turning points in that matchup. And I expect actually, India to be a real threat coming to these shores this summer. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think West Indies, with the likes of Rakeem Cornwall going into this test match as an example. Now, he has taken, I think 25 wickets in his last 3 test matches, something along those lines. So quite an extreme, 2 tenfers in that time in subcontinental conditions. He's a serious bowler. I expect the West Indies to be a real threat with the ball. But of course, Sri Lanka will have Embal Denye, who'll come back into that side. He's got 45 wickets across his last 9 games, and of course took 15 against England in the last 2 test matches that Sri Lanka played. So yeah, it could be a fascinating matchup from a spin perspective.
Yeah, there's a few positives of the Sri Lankans to take from this. I mean, it's 3-0 in the ODIs, and was it 2-1 in the T20s? But Guna Tilaka, Karuna Ratner, both batted nicely, and I think that the Test series will be a different prospect. They should be hopeful going into that, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, Sri Lanka cricket it's one of those. It's a fairly long transitional phase that they're going in, and certainly COVID hasn't helped. If you look at their record a lot across the last calendar year, and largely, of course, that's been played in COVID-like conditions, but they've played 12 games, they've lost 11 across all formats. It's been a miserable time for the side and Mickey Arthur, but it's so they could easily, those two test matches against England, they had the opportunities, didn't they, at home, as you might expect in their backyard. And I expect, although they've got done in the ODIs, I think they will be a bit more of a threat in the test matches. West Indies are very much, expected to win, but you saw that, the performances of the likes of Gunnar Tilaka. I thought he batted absolutely beautifully across both series, actually, to be fair. And also Hasaranga with bat and ball. I mean, he looks a serious all-rounder. He was top of the averages with the bat. And I expect he'll be a major threat with the ball in the tests as well. It'll be a fascinating matchup.
Now, this test series starts on Sunday. Is it staying in Antigua for the first test?
Yes, it is. So all the games are taking place in Antigua. They're both games at the Sir Vivian Richards Stadium. It'd be interesting to see what's served up. The West Indies on the one hand, I think, those pitches, the pitches across the ODIs suited actually the way in which the West Indies go about their business. And actually the pitches in Bangladesh were pretty flat. Certainly if you compared to the pitches you saw in India that England have just played on. And, Rakeem Cornwall will be, a real threat with the ball in hand. So it really depends on what kind of surface. I expect something similar to what we saw in those ODIs to be served up for the test match.
Don't forget, Rakeem's not too bad. Stood there at first slip, is he?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, catches pigeons, doesn't he? Cornwall. No, he's. I mean, the one area of his game which I think has surprised most people is he can bat, and he hasn't scored a sausage in Test cricket thus far. So nobody's seen what he can do with the bat, and he actually tends to slide down the order even further as he goes on. But he's a real threat. And another very interesting thing about this West Indies success is they have used a staggering 39 players across the tour to Bangladesh and the 3 series at home. How you can win 7 games out of 8 using 39 players is just extraordinary, which goes to show that the West Indies have, a fair bit of quality. You could argue on the one hand that, of course, playing against the likes of Bangladesh and Sri Lanka at the bottom of the kind of frontier pile of Test cricket and international cricket. But I know this resurgence narrative has been going on for many a moons, when they beat England on the last occasion, etc. And we've seen it over the last 20 years. But I just wonder if they're starting to build something quite special here.
Do you think there's been any, in the past, attitude was levelled at various players and in maybe the team as a whole, that they didn't seem to have that hunger, desire, or will to win? From what you've seen covering this series, has there been a change?
It's a really good question. The fitness of the players and the attitude, if you like, has been a recurring narrative. There's lots of bickering among various islands and people over selection, and West Indies politics is a huge factor. Cricket politics is a huge factor. Not when you've got 17 territories providing players for the test team, but the fitness is a really interesting one. Sometimes it's kind of basically just hidden under a stone, and at the moment actually it's a really key factor. Shimron Hetmeyer, who is a wonderful talent, as we saw with that 92 he scored against Barbados in that first test against England. What a talent. And he was left out of these series of games because he didn't pass the yo-yo test, didn't pass the fitness test. O'Shane Thomas was another. Roston Chase didn't pass a fitness test. So, I think they come back into the reckoning for the test matches. But, fitness is a big thing. And I think, the whole ethos of the game is to try and get people in as good a condition as possible. I certainly don't think COVID bubbles and things like that particularly helps with preparation and keeping an eye on players' fitness when you're stuck in hotel rooms for endless hours on end. But it's very much a key factor. I think they want, if you look back at the success of the West Indies side in the 70s and 80s, they were a supremely fit outfit. And I think that's the direction of travel for this side.
There's also the backdrop over this last series of the change in leadership with Jason Holder being asked to step aside and make way for Kraigg Brathwaite. I thought it was quite poignant that at each point of victory in these ODIs, Jason Holder was at the crease when the ridding runs were hit. What do you make? What are your thoughts on this change of captaincy?
Oh, it's a tough one. It's a real tough one. I think it may have been coming for a while. I think the success in Bangladesh and the fact that Jason Holder wasn't there was a significant factor in this. for the West Indies to win away, apart from Zimbabwe, that was their, away. That's their first win in a major series away from home since 2012. That was a significant factor. I think also, interesting enough, listening to Bishop's views, is he feels that fundamentally that Kraigg Brathwaite actually is a more astute captain, and that perhaps Jason Holder was a little conservative over the few years, and Kraigg Brathwaite looks for more positive options. The problem he may have down the line is whether he can actually justify his position in the side as a bat, and that is going to be a key narrative going forward. The thing about Jason Holder is that it's quite easy to he was the first name on the team sheet, number one ranked all rounder in pretty much all formats for a series of time. Kraigg Brathwaite doesn't hold those kind of cards, but he's an astute captain, as we saw in the way in which he delivered those wins in Bangladesh, and he's proving to be. As far as West Indian opinion, as with every decision made in the Caribbean, it's split. Simple as.
Oh yeah, you're right. There are talks from street corners and run shops all the way up to selector level, and as you say, it's so political. This whole small island, big island mentality, and I think it's been going on for as long as I can remember. But
oh yeah, during their successful years as well, absolutely key narrative.
And I'm just wondering if I thought Jason Holder led the side amazingly last year through the return to cricket after the pandemic. And I'm just wondering whether he's been a bit hard done by so soon. But I suppose if you're saying just looking on form and on just basically leadership on the field and tactics on the field, whether, his time had come. He did drop he shelled one at first slip, didn't he, on Sunday, which I couldn't believe.
Yeah, he had a mixed series, actually, especially with the ball, Jason Holder. It's difficult. The first major series that I covered with the West Indies was when England toured over there. And of course, it was a fantastic win, going 2-0 up in the first two tests, winning the series. His double 100 in that first test. Where was he batting at number 8? He couldn't put a foot wrong. And I thought he did a really good job in England as well. It looked a tired performance in New Zealand, but nobody goes there. They are the world number one side, and nobody wins in New Zealand, do they? England have a shocking record there. India have as well. Nobody wins over there. So it's difficult. But I think one of the statements in all this is that he wasn't available to go to Bangladesh for whatever reason. And I think that selectors wanted to make a statement and back the players that were there and delivered for the West Indies, and you can understand that. But it certainly seems a harsh call. But it's the difference of opinions across the board. I'm on a sort of cricket following West Indies WhatsApp chat, and I usually have anywhere between sort of 5,000 and 10,000 notifications every minute on there. With people offering different opinions. But look, he was an outstanding ambassador for the game, brilliant manager, and captained a side in a very difficult era for West Indies cricket.
Well, the first test starts in Antigua on Sunday. Flow Sports covering it, and available if you're watching in the UK via the YouTube channel, I believe.
Yeah, it's also on BT Sport over here. So there's good. I think in terms of, obviously, Darren, as your podcast is a global experience. I can tell you where you can pick it up in the US. I think it's on ESPN. In Sub-Saharan Africa, it's on SuperSport, and there are various options to get it out in Asia as well.
Well, I think we could all do with a nice Sunday afternoon spent watching Caribbean sunshine and Caribbean cricket coming into our living rooms. So we look forward to your excellent hosting of events and the great panel you've got with you alongside. Always very entertaining as well, and always good to hear the voice of Ian Bishop on comms as well. So Johnny, we look forward to the coverage, which starts Sunday. I think it's about 2:00, isn't it? Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, that's right. I think it gets underway early afternoon, coverage about half an hour before the start time. But a very gentle way to spend the Sunday afternoon.
Excellent. Always good to catch up, Johnny. Take it easy, and we'll speak soon.
Thanks, Aaron.